One day you realize, no one asks for your opinion anymore. The family dinners are still full, the laughter still echoes. But you sit there like a guest. No one means to hurt you. It's just that you've slowly become small in the very home you once held together. Elena noticed it the first time when she made her usual Sunday roast. Her hands still remembered every seasoning, every tender fold of the dough, the familiar rhythm of preparing something from love. But when the family arrived, they'd already eaten. Someone had picked up takeout on the way. No one was rude, no one was cold. Just, no one had thought to ask what she was cooking. She smiled and said it was fine. But something inside her quietly fell. Aging doesn't come like a storm. It arrives quietly, through distracted nods, meetings you're no longer invited to, and eyes that look past you without really seeing you anymore. She used to be the planner. The one who knew everyone's birthdays, who made sure the table was set just right, who reminded people to call, to visit, to say thank you. But now there are group chats she's not part of. Decisions made without her. Vacations she hears about after the tickets are bought. She sits there, napkin in lap, fork in hand, and realizes she's become part of the background. At first it's easy to brush off. They're just busy, she tells herself. They're young, they're running around, they've got children and deadlines and stress. But then it happens again. And again. Until one morning she looks in the mirror and thinks, when did I stop being necessary? The shift is subtle. You're still loved, still invited. But you start to notice the difference between being present and being essential. You used to be the center. The one people circled around. Now you're off to the side, still smiling, still kind, still yourself. But no longer at the heart of things. And it hurts. Not because of pride or ego, but because of love. Because you remember how it felt to be the one who kept it all together. And now, you watch the world go on without you at the center, and a small part of you wonders, what is my role now? Elena sat in her chair one afternoon, watching the kids play in the backyard, her son and daughter-in-law sipping iced tea and chatting on the patio. No one looked over. No one waved. She was just there. And in that moment, something inside her quietly asked, have I become invisible? It's not that people don't care. It's that they forget to see. They forget to notice the woman who once stayed up all night holding them through fevers, who clipped coupons so there'd be enough for field trips, who didn't buy herself new shoes so they could have what they needed. Now she blends into the wallpaper of the life she helped build. And then comes the next quiet change. The future becomes a blank page. It happens slowly, like a calendar that no longer gets filled in. Lunch plans that don't get made. Projects that never start. You stop saying next year, because next year feels too far away. The weeks pass, the days drift, and you no longer look ahead with the same spark you once had. For Elena, it happened when she stopped planting flowers. Every spring, she used to line the porch with marigolds and lavender, filling the garden with color and fragrance. But last year she didn't go to the nursery. She told herself it was too much trouble. But deep down it was because something felt missing. Like, what's the point of planting something that might not even be seen? There's a quiet grief in no longer making plans. A soft, aching sadness in letting go of what once brought joy. You stop talking about dreams. You stop thinking about the trips you used to want to take. You tell yourself you're slowing down. But deep down it feels more like giving up. And yet, there's something else too. Something that still stirs. Because the truth is, you are still here. And though the world may forget to look your way, and the phone may not ring as often, and the holidays may come without your recipes, your story isn't over. You are not a guest in your own life. You are not a shadow in the background. You are still someone with a voice. With wisdom. With presence. Even if others forget, even if they're too busy to ask, even if the world moves faster now, you still matter. Elena began to feel it the day she decided to plant just one pot. Just one. A small rosemary bush in a cracked clay pot. She set it outside her window. And every morning she'd open the curtain, let the light fall across the green leaves and take a breath. It wasn't much. But it was hers. It was a step forward. It's easy to think that aging means fading away. But that's not the truth. Not the whole truth. Aging means you've lived. Deeply, fiercely, fully. It means you've loved and built and cried and laughed. It means your story is filled with chapters no one else could have written. And it also means there are still pages left. So maybe the family doesn't ask your opinion as often. Maybe the world has gotten louder and faster and more digital than you'd like. Maybe you sit at that table and feel unseen. But you are still here. You are still worthy of being heard and needed and known. And sometimes change begins with the smallest thing. A question, a seed, a call, a quiet decision to not disappear. Aging doesn't mean letting go of who you are. It means holding yourself a little closer, even when the world forgets to. And when you do, when you dare to believe you're still valuable, you start to see differently. You begin to reach again, speak again, hope again. Because the painful truth is that yes, some things are changing. But the powerful truth is that you still have the power to shape what comes next. There are feelings that don't come with names. They arrive quietly, like clouds passing over a bright afternoon, soft at first, almost unnoticeable. But over time they settle in. They wrap around your mornings. They press gently on your chest when you lie awake at night. You don't always cry. You don't always speak. But you feel them. In the pauses between conversation, in the silence after the phone doesn't ring, in the way your coffee tastes just a little emptier than it used to. Elena began to notice it after her husband passed. At first it was the obvious things, the empty chair, the quiet evenings. But later it was in the way she stopped mentioning her sore knees. In the way she said, "I'm fine," even when she wasn't. In the way she started skipping the mirror, brushing past it like a stranger. She didn't want to be a burden. She didn't want to be the sad one. And so she began to hide her pain. Not because she was weak, but because that's what strong people often do. They carry their grief in quiet hands. They smile so others don't worry. They listen so others can speak. And slowly they learn how to tuck their own heartache into the corners of a room no one visits. You begin to smile out of habit. To say, "I'm okay," because it's easier than explaining why you're not. You laugh at jokes that don't touch you anymore. You nod at conversations that float past you like radio static. And deep down you wonder if anyone would even notice if you stopped talking. But they would. Oh, they would. It's just that people forget how to ask. They forget that even when the hair turns white and the hands grow slower, there's still a soul inside. Tender, longing, just as alive as ever, needing connection. Needing kindness. Needing to be held without explanation. But sometimes when you hide your pain long enough, it becomes part of you. You stop crying not because you've healed, but because the tears have gone quiet. You stop hoping not because you've let go, but because you're afraid of disappointment. And slowly a new feeling creeps in. The sense that maybe nothing really matters anymore. That's what hit Elena one Tuesday morning. She woke up, made her tea and sat at the window. The birds were chirping. The sun was warm. But she felt nothing. Not sadness. Not joy. Just nothing. She stared out at the garden she once loved and thought, what's the point? No one visits. No one notices. The days repeat themselves like a song that's lost its tune. She wasn't in pain exactly. But she wasn't alive either. It's a dangerous kind of emptiness. The kind that doesn't shout but whispers. The kind that doesn't knock you over but gently removes color from your life, one shade at a time. You still eat. You still walk. You still answer the phone. But inside something has gone dim. And you begin to ask yourself, does any of this still matter? For many older adults that feeling comes quietly. You've lived decades. You've seen joy and sorrow, weddings and funerals, gains and losses. You've held babies and buried friends. And somewhere along the way the spark that once kept you reaching forward starts to flicker. Not because you're broken. Not because you've failed. But because it's hard to keep dreaming in a world that keeps passing you by. And so you stop sharing. Not just your plans but your heart. You no longer speak about the things that truly weigh you down. The friend who hasn't called in months, the worry about finances, the fear of dying alone, the aching guilt over words you never said. You lock those feelings away like a box in the attic. You tell yourself they're too heavy. You don't want to upset the children. You don't want to sound dramatic. You don't want to seem needy. But the truth is, not speaking doesn't make the pain disappear. It just buries it deeper. Elena remembered sitting across from her daughter at brunch. The food was lovely, the conversation polite. But the whole time she wanted to say, "I miss your father so much it hurts to breathe." She wanted to say, "I feel forgotten." She wanted to ask, "Do you even see me anymore?" But she didn't. He smiled and asked about work. He complimented the kids. She picked at her scone and nodded. And when she got home she cried in the bathroom with the door closed. Because sometimes the loneliest place isn't being alone. It's being with people who don't see what you're carrying. There's a quiet kind of heartbreak that comes with aging. When you realize that the world keeps moving and the people you love grow busy, and your grief becomes something you handle alone. But here's the thing. You deserve to be known. Even now. Especially now. Your pain is not too much. Your feelings are not a burden. You are not too emotional or too sensitive for speaking what's true. The people who love you may not always ask. They may not always notice. But that doesn't mean you have to stay silent. Elena started small. She began by writing letters to herself. Honest letters. Raw, unfiltered, gentle. She wrote, I miss him. She wrote, I feel left behind. She wrote, I want to matter again. And in that writing something shifted. A softness returned. A light. It wasn't about fixing everything. It was about acknowledging what was real. And over time she found the courage to say those things out loud. To a friend, to a counselor, even to her daughter. And what she discovered was this. When you speak your truth even gently, you create space for connection. Oh, it doesn't fix everything. But it reminds you, and them, that you're still here. Still feeling. Still needing. Because you never stop being human. You never stop needing to be heard. To be held. To be understood. The emotions may not have names. But they have weight. And when you carry them alone they grow heavier. But even one moment of honesty, one soft sentence, can begin to lift them. And maybe that's what healing really is at this stage of life. Not erasing the sorrow, but allowing yourself to be seen in it. Because aging may change your body. It may take away people you love. It may even blur your sense of where you belong. But it doesn't take away your right to feel. To ache. To love. To be loved. So if you're sitting in that chair today staring out a window wondering if it all still matters, I'm here to tell you, it does. You do. And you are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are not alone in the way you feel. Speak it even just once. Write it. Whisper it. Cry it. Let the truth breathe again. Because your emotions are not shameful. They're beautiful. They are the quiet proof that you're still alive, still hoping, still human. And that matters more than you know. There's a kind of fading that doesn't happen all at once. It begins with little things. A dinner invitation you turn down because you're tired. A phone call you let go to voicemail because you don't know what to say. A gathering you skip because it feels easier to stay home. You tell yourself it's no big deal. Next time, you say. But somehow next time never comes. Elena used to love her community center's Wednesday morning chats. Fresh coffee, familiar faces, quiet laughter. But one rainy morning she stayed home. Her back hurt a little. Her knees were stiff. She thought, just this once. Then the next week came and she didn't go. And slowly, without deciding to, she stopped showing up. No one meant to forget her. They simply assumed she had things to do or maybe wasn't feeling up to it. They didn't want to bother her. And Elena, well, she didn't want to explain. She told herself, they're better off without me there anyway. But she wasn't fine. Not really. Because something deeper was happening. Something harder to admit. She had forgotten how to express her needs. It's not that she didn't have them. She still longed to be seen, to feel useful, to feel safe and heard and needed. But somewhere along the line her voice had grown quiet. Not because she didn't care, but because she had convinced herself that caring out loud wasn't allowed anymore. She would sit at her kitchen table staring at her grocery list, struggling to carry heavy items alone, but refusing to ask anyone for help. She would smile at the neighbor who offered to carry her bag and politely say, "No, I've got it, thank you." Even when she didn't. Especially when she didn't. There's a complicated kind of pride that lives in older hearts. The kind that comes from a lifetime of being strong. Of raising others. Of never needing. And now to admit that you do? It feels like losing something you spent your whole life building. But the truth is, asking for help doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. It means you're brave enough to say, I can't do this alone, even when it feels uncomfortable. It means you're choosing connection over silent suffering. But Elena didn't see it that way. Not yet. She prided herself on independence. She'd always handled things on her own. Bills. Housework. Even grief. She didn't want to bother her children. They had their own lives, their own kids, their own worries. So she said nothing. Not when she nearly slipped on the front step. Not when she had trouble reaching the top shelf. Not when she felt dizzy after walking too far in the garden. She told herself, I'm just tired. She told them, everything's good. But it wasn't. And she knew it. Deep down in those quiet moments before sleep, she felt the weight of pretending. The weariness of holding everything in. The ache of never saying what she truly felt. And still she smiled. She smiled when they visited. She smiled when they asked how she was doing. She smiled when they told her how amazing she looked. Because sometimes, it's easier to pretend you're fine than risk being seen as fragile. But the danger is, when you pretend long enough, people start to believe it. They stop offering help. They stop asking deeper questions. They stop noticing the sadness beneath the surface. And you start to disappear into your own silence. That's what was happening to Elena. Not because she wasn't loved, but because she wore her mask so well. She became an expert at hiding behind polite answers and carefully rehearsed, "I'm okay." She knew how to smile without feeling joy. How to chat without being present. How to act alive while quietly slipping away inside. She wasn't living. She was managing. Surviving. Maintaining an image of strength while quietly unraveling. And no one could see it because she made sure they couldn't. But eventually, even the strongest walls begin to crack. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. Elena was carrying a basket of laundry up the stairs when her leg gave out. She didn't fall, not quite. But she sat down on the step, heart pounding, and felt the tears come. Not because of the pain, but because in that moment she realized how tired she was of pretending. Of pretending to be okay. Of pretending to not need anyone. Of pretending that aging hadn't changed everything. She sat there, clutching the laundry, breathing in the stillness, and whispered to herself, "I don't want to do this alone anymore." And that whisper, that tiny sentence, was the beginning of her return. Because pretending may protect you from pity, but it also shuts out compassion. It keeps people at arm's length. It creates distance where there could be closeness. And for what? For pride? For fear? For a version of strength that leaves you isolated? True strength doesn't mean never needing help. It means knowing when to reach for a hand, and being brave enough to take it. Elena began slowly. She started by saying yes. Yes to help with groceries. Yes to a ride to her appointment. Yes to company on her walk. And every yes chipped away at the silence. Every small moment of honesty gave her back a piece of herself. And her family, they responded. Not with pity, but with love. With gentleness. With relief. Because sometimes, the people around you are just waiting for permission to be there for you. They don't want to push. They don't want to disrespect your independence. But they do want to help. They want to show up. They want to be part of your life, not just on birthdays or holidays, but in the everyday, ordinary ways that say, you matter. So if you're someone who's been saying, "I'm fine," a little too often. If you've been turning down help not because you don't need it, but because you're afraid to need it. If you've been holding back your truth, your exhaustion, your fear because it feels safer to stay quiet, then this is your moment. To exhale. To say it out loud. To pick up the phone. To accept the invitation. To ask for what you need, even if it's just a little company on a lonely day. Because you don't have to prove your strength anymore. You've already lived through enough. This chapter of your life doesn't have to be about managing alone. It can be about reconnecting. Letting people in. Being seen, not for who you used to be but for who you are right now. Still human. Still worthy. Still loved. And never, ever too late to stop pretending and start truly living again. The hardest part of aging isn't the body slowing down. It isn't the loneliness, the silence, or the way people stop looking you in the eye. It's the memories that won't let go. It's the quiet hours in the middle of the night when you lie awake and think, "I should have said something." Or worse, "I shouldn't have stayed quiet for so long." Elena had spent most of her life giving more than she received. Not because she was weak, but because that's how she loved. She was the kind of woman who stayed late to clean up after parties no one thanked her for. The kind who listened for hours to others but rarely spoke of herself. The kind who forgave without being asked and smiled through things that should have broken her. Now, in the stillness of her later years, she sometimes wondered if it was all worth it. Not in a bitter way. Just quietly. She would look through old photos, birthdays, weddings, Christmases, and smile at the memories. But behind that smile lived a question she didn't dare ask aloud. Did they ever really see me? There had been so many moments she had swallowed her words. So many times she had bitten back her truth, afraid of upsetting someone, afraid of seeming ungrateful, afraid of rocking the boat. She didn't speak up when she was hurt. She didn't ask for more when she needed it. She didn't say, "That's not okay," when something cut too deep. She told herself it was the kind thing to do. The strong thing. The loving thing. But now she wasn't so sure. Because over time, every unspoken truth had settled like dust in her chest. She could feel them, those words that never came out. They weighed on her shoulders. They made her breaths shallow. They made her feel like a ghost in her own story. There were things she wished she'd said to her husband before he passed. Not dramatic things. Just real things. Like how lonely she sometimes felt even with him sitting right beside her. Or how she needed more kindness, more gentleness. Not grand gestures, just a soft hand on her back once in a while. A few words to let her know she mattered. But she never told him. Because she thought love meant never asking for more than what was given. It doesn't. Love means being honest even when your voice shakes. Love means letting yourself be known. Not just the parts that smile and serve, but the parts that ache and long and cry. She wished she had known that sooner. But here's the quiet grace of life. It's never too late to speak your truth. It's never too late to look in the mirror and say, "I deserve more." It's never too late to whisper to the ones around you, "I need to feel seen." Elena didn't wake up one day and decide to bare her soul. It happened slowly. One afternoon while folding laundry, her daughter came by. Just an ordinary visit. But as they chatted about groceries and grandkids, Elena suddenly said, "I miss you when you're here." Her daughter blinked. "What do you mean?" And Elena, for the first time in years, didn't hide. "I miss when we used to talk. Not about chores or errands. About life. About you. About me." There was a pause. A long one. Then her daughter sat down. Held her hand. And for the first time in a long time they truly saw each other. That moment didn't fix everything. But it cracked something open. And once it's open, the light starts to get in. It wasn't just her daughter. Elena began to say things she never used to say. To her son, "You don't have to solve everything for me. I just want your company." To her neighbor, "I'd love to come by sometime. I get lonely more than I let on." To herself, "It's okay to want more." And in the quiet mornings that followed, as she sat by the window with her tea, she noticed the way her breath came easier. The dust in her chest began to clear. She still had regrets. We all do. There were years she couldn't get back. But now there was space for something new. Not big, sweeping change. Just small, honest moments. A little more truth in her days. A little more softness toward herself. And something else began to shift too. That haunting question, was I ever really loved the way I needed? It no longer carried the same sting. Because she began to understand. Love isn't always loud. It's not always perfect. And sometimes, people love you in the only way they know how, even if it doesn't always reach the places in you that need it most. But that doesn't mean it wasn't real. And it doesn't mean you can't ask for more now. Because you're still here. Still breathing. Still capable of healing. Of being held. Of being heard. So many people reach this stage of life believing their story is over. That the rest of the pages will be quiet, uneventful, filled only with waiting. But that's not true. The story is still yours. You still have choices. You can still speak. Still laugh. Still cry. Still connect. Still rediscover parts of yourself you thought were long gone. And if you've been living with the weight of regret, please know this. Regret only has power over you when it stays silent. Say it out loud. To a friend. To a family member. To a journal. To the sky. Let it out. Because the moment you do, you begin to make peace with it. You don't have to carry the ache forever. You don't have to pretend anymore. There's strength in honesty. There's freedom in truth. There's healing in the soft, steady work of forgiving yourself. For all the things you didn't know then. You were doing your best. And you still are. So pick one small thing today. One truth to say. One person to call. One part of yourself to be kind to. Because this part of life, this season, it isn't about fading. It's about becoming. Becoming softer. Becoming braver. Becoming more honest, more open, more at peace with who you are and what you've lived through. You are not too old to change. You are not too late to be loved in the way you always needed. And you are certainly not done. This is still your life. And it's worth living with everything you've got left in you.